Relatively new site and needs some work.
Okay. So one of the first things that we look at when we approach any site is kind of divide and conquer. And as I mentioned earlier, there are different areas in which we can start our analysis and begin to look for those opportunities. So as I took a look at this site, I broke it down into 4 areas. I looked at first what we would call titles and meta tags and the associated code. So anybody can see that information by coming to a website, going to view up in the top bar, and coming down to page source or source, depending on which browser you're using. So this brings up a lot of code and stuff that most people are unfamiliar with. But there are really some very simple things that we can begin to look for as we're analyzing this. So within this, the single most important area is right here. It's called page title. Page title is an opportunity for you to tell the search engines exactly what this page is about, and oh, by the way, use the most important keywords and phrases that you're focusing on for that page. So typically, depending on who you ask, it's going to be between 60 and 80 characters in length that you have to tell a very focused story to the search engines and potential visitors of that site of exactly what that page is about. So right here, this kind of set off some warning flags for me, because the main focus of this, and oh by the way, every other page of this site, the page title is CTIX. This should be unique for every page of the site that you want the search engines to find, and it should be about those concepts that are going to bring people here. And what I typically tell a customer is, unless you have an extremely well-known brand that you've invested millions in marketing, that probably shouldn't be the focus of your page title. Because if somebody knows your name, chances are they're going to come to your website directly. So let's leverage all of the opportunities that are out there to tap into what other people are searching on. So that brings us back to what we talked about earlier, which is, what are other people searching on? There are lots of tools that are available, some free, some fee-based, some subscription-based. Here's just an example, a tool set that I like called Rapid Keyword. And just done, actually this morning, was just playing around looking at different ways in which people who would be potential customers of CTIX would be out looking. So tapping into things like Playhouse Square, which has a tremendous amount of searches, the Cleveland Playhouse, the tickets for the shows. There are truly endless opportunities for CTIX to take advantage of the wide array of keywords and phrases that people are actively typing. So knowing that, that's where we have to actively make that correlation back to page titles and meta tags. So when I said page titles and meta tags encompasses what we'll often call the meta description as well as the meta keywords fields. These are 2 additional opportunities that you have to tell a search engine exactly what this page is about. Neither of which are given the same importance or prominence as the page title, but they're still important to have there. And right now, CTIX is not taking advantage of that. They're not currently using those tags. So that's another opportunity. Going down through the list of possible tags, as I start to go into programmer speak, I can watch the eyes glaze over, but there are H1s and H2s all the way down through H6 tags, and they're header tags. The search engines have historically and still currently placed more weighting and more value on those header tags. So understanding how to use those and understanding that you should work your important keywords and phrases into those tags is all part of the process. Which is why it's really important to start thinking about SEO before your website is already built. I would say that's the #1 mistake that people make, is they build their site and then think about marketing it. Really, to do search engine optimization well, it needs to start from the very early planning stage. Before the designer even starts doing wireframes and layouts, search engine optimization should be part of that process. Then moving forward with that process, as the pages are being built, Jan referenced valid HTML. So there is a tool that's available on the list that I'll give you that allows you to just put in a URL, and it's going to bring up a bunch of different errors. The errors may not preclude your site from performing well to the visitor, but it makes it more difficult for a search engine spider to navigate and have faith in the quality of your site. So valid HTML is an important part of the overall optimization process. The next thing that we'll take a look at, kind of switching back over, is to then start to look at the actual design and infrastructure of the site. So this is what the user sees and also what the search engines are now taking a look at. So the first thing that comes to mind, and this was the same thing that Jan referenced with the last site, this entire top part, the entire header of the site is monopolized by graphics. And the bad news is search engines don't really see graphics, so anything that's taking up that space is all but invisible to them. As Jan also mentioned, it's pushing the valuable content of the website down closer to the fold, so you're saying that that's less important than what you have up top. So looking and trying to make a concerted effort to get text above graphics is something that we absolutely need to look at. Another area is that top navigation. Although it looks like text, these are all containing graphics. So everything up here is a graphic that the search engines are not able to pick up and will likely have difficulty following to the subsequent pages. So again, as we talk about what are the decisions that we make during the design process and how do those impact search engine optimization, I would absolutely say that those should be made, in simple text links that probably wouldn't look a heck of a lot different than they do now. So understanding that text-based navigation is much better and easier for search engines to follow. There's a whole broader discussion that we'll have to schedule another event around in terms of all of the other more technical things that you can do to create problems for the search engines, like use of JavaScript in the drop-down menus and all those sorts of things. But just understanding that the easiest way to ensure the search engines can follow your nav is through text-based navigation. One of the other things that caught my eye with this site as I begin to look through it is URL structure. So URL structure, I'm referring to what you see up in the address there as you go through this site. So at a simplest level, a way to kind of speak to the masses is that as soon as you start introducing non-alphanumeric characters, so question marks, equal signs, ampersands, percent signs, and so on, you're at risk. The search engines can certainly index that stuff. They're getting better and better at indexing it, but it's based on business rules that tell them how deep do they want to go down. Because every time they see that, it's indicative that this site is being dynamically generated from a database, a content management system, an e-commerce system, and so on. So to help them understand and appreciate that, yes, this is a path you do want them to go down, whenever possible, we like to take those out of the equation. We call that rewriting URLs. But as you'll see, as I scroll down real quick, that's not the case here. So I'm putting my cursor over top of one of these links, and then if you look down, if somebody can hit it for me, you can see the ugly URLs that this, what I'm guessing is a content management system, is creating. So this is a very common, yeah, question?
Would you be penalized then for using the URL?
No, so basically they're going to follow up to that part that you're telling them not to pay attention to anymore. So when you add a question mark and a parameter that says source equals Google and your keyword is so-and-so, that's all right because it's at the end. They've already got to the page and indexed the URL that you want them to get to. The problem is when the page won't build without those dynamic parameters. So you often see this in a retail world where they've got a category ID, a subcategory ID, a product ID, and maybe an attribute like color or size or something like that. So in this case, other than probably a content management system that's dictating this, there's really no reason for that, and it's likely posing significant issues. So there are tools that are available, or processes called URL rewriting that we would absolutely recommend to somebody who has a URL structure like this. The example I'll use. Back when I worked at Things Remembered, when I started working on their site, we had 6 pages of thingsremembered.com that were actively being indexed by Google. We went through a URL rewriting process with Brulant where they actually came in, implemented a rewriting solution, and about 2 weeks after that we went from 6 to 6,000 pages of the site being indexed. And it was solely a matter of changing that URL structure. So if you have the luxury of planning from the ground up and saying, we're simply not going to use those, or if you have a system, a content management or e-commerce system that dictates that type of URL, understanding that there's one more step we need to take in order to rewrite those URLs to something that will take all guesswork out of the equation for the search engines. So that's very important. One of the other things that we saw is that there are issues of what we'll call conical URLs. So up at the top, you'll see that I am at ctix.org and then so on and so on. You'll see that I have 0 page rank associated with that page. You will then see if I add, potentially. All right, so it didn't bring up the page rank, but the point is still valid. I've now reached a separate page or separate version of that same page. See, all right, good, it was just faster than Google. So now I have a 5 out of 10 page rank. So I went from one way of getting to the home page that has 0 page rank in Google's eye to another version of getting to that exact same page that has a 5 out of 10 page rank, which is pretty solid. So why is this a problem? So the main reason why this is a problem is this concept of link popularity that we're going to talk about in a minute. Link popularity, again, is getting other websites to link into you, which is a major component of Google's algorithm. So understanding that and knowing that if I owned a website and I wanted to link to this page, I may come to the home page and grab that URL and make that the source of my link. But I also may grab it without the www. It just depends on what my preference was for how I got to your site in the first place. So now, instead of having all of the links focused at one version of the page, we're leaking PageRank and link popularity because we're now splitting those between 2 separate versions of the same page. Now, back in about January of this year, Google went through a major update called Big Daddy. And the Big Daddy update put a major focus on conical URLs. If you think about it, if Google stores 2 versions of every page, 2 or more versions of every page of your site, they're taking up a tremendous amount of space in their database that doesn't need to be taken up. So Google said, if you don't have the means to help us decide which URL to index, we're just going to decide on our own. And what we found is that that decision may not be the page that you wanted them to have in your index. So we need to do some things that are going to help them understand exactly which version of the page we want them to have. So just like we talked about with your site, using a 301 redirect to say this moved over here, I can do that very same thing here and saying, if you type in my URL without the www, redirect me permanently to the version of it that does have the www. So understanding how we can leverage these technology solutions to kind of clean up everything that we've done from a URL standpoint. So that's something else important to keep in mind. Moving on to the next phase of what we would talk about, we'll refer to them as off-site elements or off-site optimization. And the big piece of that is link popularity. So as we talk about link popularity, we go out and we say, what are the easiest ways to generate high-quality incoming links to our site? So there are a couple major directories which should be your first stop in that process, and what we found is that was not the case for this site, for CTIX. So DMOZ, or the Open Directory, it's dmoz.org. It's a human, volunteer human edited directory that's been around for a very long time. And because it has traditionally been of very high quality, the search engines naturally give it a lot of value. So if you have a listing in DMOZ that's pointing from DMOZ to your site, you're going to get an incredible amount of value associated with that. That's an opportunity right now that CTIX is missing. So just like with Myers, I would run back and set the 301 redirect. With this, I would start the process with DMOZ because it's going to take just short of forever to get that link now. It's a very, very slow process. Same thing, the second one that I would go to is the Yahoo directory. Again, CTIX was missing out on the Yahoo directory listing. So those are 2 very high-powered incoming links that they currently were not taking advantage of. Then to look at and start to dissect what incoming links do they have. So it's very clear that this site has a tie-in to the Cleveland CVB. If you dissect the backlink structure of the CTIX site, so if you actually look at which sites are linking into that, which I'll show you how to do in a minute, I'd say 99% of them come from travelcleveland.com. So another site owned by the CVB. So the problem with that is it's a link on every single page of Travel Cleveland going to the very same page on CTIX with the exact same link structure, so the same text within that hyperlink. The search engines have said, as people have gone out and tried to artificially inflate their link popularity, if you're going to do that, it's going to look a little odd that you're going to have every page of a site linking to the very same page of your site with the exact same link structure. So when I started my prior company, Cleveland Search Engine Optimization, every link that I put on one of my customer sites said, Cleveland Search Engine Optimization. Well, not only was that the most important keyword that I was targeting, it just happened to be the name of the company. The problem was, because I used that, when Google made their round of updates, I watched my rankings absolutely tank as the result of that. Google simply said it's unnatural that every link would say the same thing and point to the same page. So instead of generating links where every one of them goes to your homepage, they want to see diversity. They want high-level links that go to your homepage. They want deeper-level links that go to a certain service or product offering that you have, and they absolutely want to see the text within that link vary, just like it would if you didn't even try to generate incoming links and it just happened because people were interested in your site. So the travel Cleveland links are of great concern to me. Another one of our national competitors, a company called SEO, got themselves into very big trouble with this. They went and they bought text-based links on Weather Underground. Weather Underground, as a website, put that text link on every single page of every single city throughout the country. And what that did was went from having no links to hundreds of thousands of incoming links that all said the same thing overnight. So they went from first place in Google to, I think, on the 190th page they showed up after after people actually had the patience to find them. So the search engines are continually trying to get smarter. So the main message I'll leave anybody with is don't try to beat the engines. Understand what it is that they're looking for, and by providing that to them, you're going to get good rankings in return. Just a couple more things. Domain age is obviously an issue with this site. It's a newer site, as we covered that topic before, so that's something we'll want to take a look at. And there's a lot of opportunity as it relates to the incoming links to get links from sites that have been around for a long time. The biggest opportunity I saw with CTIX is as they provide information about each theater or each location or each artist that's coming to town, put out some tools that are going to naturally encourage links. So anyone who's been involved in search engine optimization knows that link development is a difficult process. There aren't a lot of people who just out of the goodness of their heart want to link to you. So if you can provide something of value that encourages them to do that, for example, if you build a tool that shows people, what their view from certain seats are going to look like in a certain theater, or you take, at the cheap level, you take just kind of a PDF of, what's the layout of the theater or the arena. Those are types of things that are going to generate naturally incoming links when people find them. So that's kind of how I round out the offsite piece. And lastly, the final piece of this is page content. So if we follow the same approach that we took before, and if I just bring up ctix.org, so if I go back and if I do that search and I look on the cached version and then I dig down into the cached text, as you understand what this site is about, it's Cleveland. This is a site all about Cleveland for people who are here or coming to town, who are visiting, who want to look at the shows and things like that. But when we really dig into it, there isn't a whole lot of information that talks about Cleveland on this site. So if I highlight all and start to dig in, you can see that only until I get down to this bottom list where it's talking about the theaters am I really going to get into the different ways or tie into the different ways in which people are searching. So as we look at this whole upper part where all the content exists, there is no keyword density whatsoever. So as we look at keyword density as the ratio of the keywords we're targeting to all the other words on the page, you'll find this whole top section has very little, if any, keyword density or focus around the keywords that they would likely be targeting. So there's a lot of opportunity to create some more concise content that truly, when I came to the site, it took me a while to figure out what it was that they did. And so it wasn't until I jumped over to the About Us page where I got some of that. So, we typically talk about a concise message or a positioning statement that explains exactly who you are and what you do and the audience you're looking to serve and incorporates the important keywords that you're focusing on. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll sit down, is another great opportunity you have to convey what pages of your site you want the search engines to find is a sitemap. That was something that Myers did very well. There was a great sitemap on there that allows the spiders to come in and get quick access to all the other pages of the site. This site doesn't have that. So as they look at where can I show some additional content and get the spiders into that, there's a big opportunity there. And you can also tie into this type of thing where you're listing out events, whereas right now when I call it, or at least it was last night, after it goes and pulls from the database, there was no content there for the search engines to find. So there were no events last night. So this is the type of opportunity where through a sitemap or through some pages where you're actually listing out upcoming events, those types of things, you have a lot of good content that you can get out to the engines.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Chris and Jan.